Hello and welcome back to the studio. This week we're painting my version of the Bob Ross classic Deep Wilderness Home. We'll learn how to paint a tranquil forest, a stream, soft velvety grass and of course a cabin the easy way. I'll use a favourite Bob Ross brush for those happy little tree secrets and of course lots of other landscape painting tips and tricks along the way. So let's spin the camera and get painting. So here's my canvas for today's painting tutorial. It's a little different. Yes, it's 16 by 20, but this time it's not painted in my usual grey colour. I've painted it with this, and this is buff titanium white, and it's really just sort of a beigey biscuit colour. Quite a nice warm tone. If you've seen any of my other tutorials, you know that I usually paint on this sort of dove grey or pale grey colour, but I wanted my painting to have a nice sort of warm tone to it. This is Bob's original painting, Deep Wilderness Home. As you can see, it's sort of got a general overall sort of lovely warm golden tone to it. So I thought, well, if I start with a nice warm golden tone canvas, I'm halfway there. And that's something you should bear in mind when you're doing these sorts of paintings. Sometimes painting on a canvas which is already toned in a warm colour is a big advantage. So let's see how we get on with this painting. Those of you with keen eyesight will notice this canvas has got grid lines on it. That's right. I divided my canvas up into thirds and it gives us these places on our canvas. These are called hotspots, places of interest where you might want to feature certain things. In this instance, maybe the cabin or maybe a little waterfall. Speaking of cabins, I have a few different reference photographs like this one that I keep in my computer. This sort of shaped cabin I think would fit very well in my painting. It's a little different to Bob's original version, but I think this would still work well. I'll see, I might make some changes. The other thing which I think works well is to have something like this, and it's just a tracing on some greaseproof paper. You see, I don't mind tracing things onto my paintings. I think it saves me having to go through all the stress and strain of trying to do something freehand. But do practice freehand drawing as well. But this really gets you something onto your painting which you know is already in the right sort of proportions and all the angles are correct. Sometimes it's better to do something like this and to learn from it than to really struggle and do a whole painting which doesn't quite fit together properly and the disappointment. As you see, I just did an outline of this little cabin. But if the size is wrong, it doesn't matter. I got two others to choose from, and I'll just offer these up over my hotspots and try and work out where I want things. The reason why is because although this is one of Terry's favourite paintings, she's not that in love with this background, and I've got to say neither am I. So she would like me to paint this one as a landscape, in other words, long ways rather than portrait. So I have to make some little changes here. And figuring out where to put that, these little hotspots are going to become important. So you saw in that last little sequence, I took quite some time to actually position this exactly in the right place on my canvas. I wanted to think about the land under it, maybe a little bit of a cliffside here, some water, maybe a feature over in here. Take your time when you're positioning things like this on your painting. It's a big feature, and if you get it in the wrong place or you just crush it up too far to one side, well, it'll be a bit of a pickle, won't it? You won't be able to get out of. And as you saw, I took a biro and I just went round the outline here just to get this onto my canvas, so I got the proportions right and those angles as well. But I need to be doing something with this now to make sure I don't lose it, because I'm actually going to be covering all of this in black gesso. But I have a plan. The next step is to use some black acrylic or gesso. I've got a small synthetic brush. I'll take just a little bit of this and I just simply want to block in my little building. Now, you don't have to get too fussy with this. There's only a few little things I really look for, and that is that I look for these little sort of overhangs here because they kind of anchor the building to the canvas, and I'm going to fill this in section by section, although it's not too critical that you get it perfect. Now, as you see, I haven't really tried too hard to be perfect with this. It's all about maintaining position. For the rest of my background, I'll be using a foam brush. And all I really want to do here is, I know I want a bright part in here somewhere. So I'm going to circle that third mark there. That's going to be my bright spot. And this is going to be sort of vegetation and foliage. So I'm going to be just literally blocking this in. And if I go up to the edge of my cabin and I touch the edges here and there, it won't matter. As long as I leave a little bit of the outline showing through, you can still sort of see the cabin. So this is a very neat way of actually putting gesso on a canvas, but leaving a main feature still visible. So I finished blocking in the back of my painting with the black gesso, and this is almost completely dry. I can just gently go over any of those edges here just to sort of knock them down a little bit more. They don't want to be too obvious, but I just want to know roughly where the cabin is in my painting. And if you think about all the branches leaning over, maybe you want to just soften up this edge a little bit more with what's left on the foam brush. And that's it. Time to leave this to dry. Where have I put my special art watch? It's around here somewhere. There it is. I'll set this for 25 minutes. So here's my canvas, and it is completely dry. Make sure it is dry, that there's no moisture trapped under the next layer, which is going to be an oil paint. Now, we need to use 2 different suits of oil paint for this. On this section, I'm going to be using this Bob Ross liquid clear oil paint. I don't want to lose my cabin, and I want to be able to see all the black through here. We're going to be applying some transparent colours to this area. For this section, we'll be using a different Bob Ross product. This one, Bob Ross liquid white oil paint. This is going to be a nice sort of misty glow in the background. And I want something here which is going to be quite pastel. And where they meet, well, I'll just blend them together slightly. Now, if perchance you didn't happen to have any of this Bob Ross liquid white, you could use liquid clear over the entire canvas and use a small amount of titanium white blended here into the background. And I know what you're thinking. If you cover this up with black and you're going to be putting something white over this, what was the point of using this beige colour? Well, you might be quite surprised that the liquid white I'm going to apply to here is going to be very sparing, and it's still going to have a little bit of a nice glow to it. Even just a subtle shift in colours can make a big difference to the finished painting. I'm going to start with the liquid clear and a very old beaten up looking Bob Ross 1-inch landscape brush. As you can see, the liquid clear, it's like sort of runny honey. And a little bit of this goes a very long way, so apply it very sparingly. As I mentioned, I'm going to apply this to the entire area that's covered with this black acrylic or gesso, and just let some of it creep into this edge. But it's quite tricky to see. As you often see me demonstrate my finger testing technique, I just run it across the surface. It doesn't want to leave any kind of a trail, it just wants to leave a sort of slightly oily feel to it. And that's just about right. If you do that and see a fingerprint running through it, then you know you've been a little bit heavy with it. You need to take some off. I'll carry on applying this to the entire outside area of my painting and then move on to the liquid white. So there's my canvas covered with the liquid clear. If I run my finger across it again, it feels just a little on the wet side, but not too wet. But do double check around those edges and make sure you haven't got any really wet patches. And of course, before I use this brush again, I want to give it a bit of a dry clean on some paper towel before I move on to painting the liquid white. For ease of application, I keep a little bit of liquid white in one of these airtight containers. I pop it in the freezer. It doesn't actually freeze the paint, but it keeps it nice and fresh. It also stops the paint drying out. But don't forget, give it a nice little stir before you try and apply it because, well, it's quite oily and the oil will separate. So give it a little stir. You can carry on using that same brush, but don't forget, just a small amount here. We've only got, well, almost less than a quarter of a canvas to cover. So you can see it sort of produces this sort of nice foggy edge to it. And of course you can still see some of this biscuit colour grinning through. So you see that warm colour does have an effect. If you touch your fingertips to it, you should pick up a small amount so you can sort of see your fingerprint. If you don't see very much though, then it looks a bit more like that. Then you probably need to add a little bit more to your canvas. And there you are. My background is prepared, ready for some colour. Let's have a look at my palette. As you can see, just a few colours. Titanium white, some black, Van Dyke brown, dark sienna, alizarin crimson, sap green, cad yellow, Indian yellow, ochre, and I'll put out some red a little later on. Now, I mentioned I wanted a little bit of a glow in the background of my painting, so I've taken my old 1-inch brush, I've given it a bit of a dry clean to get rid of the liquid white, but I'm going to pick up a little bit of the titanium white. This is a really dense, heavy white colour. And as I mentioned, I want to glow in the background here, so allow a little bit of room in here for some Indian yellow. I'm going to put just a little bit of a marker there. Just give that a little bit of a crisscross. Now, this old brush is a bit sort of crunchy, and it doesn't do a particularly nice job blending, so what I really want to do is just to establish the spot. Don't fiddle with it because it will disappear into the background. I'm going to go straight into some Indian yellow. Not cad or ochre, but Indian. Now this is a lovely transparent colour. As you see, even these dark marks on my palette show up. So we should be able to blend this into the edge of our painting and just into the edge of our white. You notice it starts to pick up a greenish tint. You see, even though the background colour is actually dry, the effect of putting yellow over black still produces green. While I'm at it, I'll extend the Indian yellow to the outside edges of my canvas and leave that little glow in the centre. To include some more of this black, again, I quite like the fact that it goes a sort of green tone. It sort of helps out with the foresty effect later on. Now it's time to switch to that nice 1-inch brush. As I say, the other one's a bit too sort of spiky, but I want to sort of tone this down a bit. It looks like a big searchlight. I just want to soften it up just a little bit more. There we go. It doesn't take much. Now, occasionally stand back and make sure your painting is what you want it to be. If you think you've lost too much of the Indian yellow, and I think I might have lost a little bit, you can always come back and add a little touch more. You do have to stand back and see what it really does look like. It can be quite surprising what looks really good close to. When you get back a few feet, well, it doesn't always look quite as you imagine. I think this is about right. I might just add a little bit touch more of the Indian yellow around here just to sort of make it look even more golden. Now, without cleaning my brush, I'm going to go straight into some alizarin crimson and a little touch of dark sienna. I want to make sort of a nice sort of burgundy brown colour. This is going to go out behind the cabin. Just to bring these edges together a little bit more. But because you can't see the colours too well, the way to test is to actually use your fingertips. Now, as you can see, there's some good strong colour there. If it's too thin and wishy-washy, then this painting won't work well. So you do need good colour. And then for my final colour, I'm going to use some Van Dyke brown through here. And I'm going to start using a little bit of some, maybe a nice blue colour through here for my water. So once again, don't bother dry cleaning your brush. Just go straight into the Van Dyke brown colour. And I want to take this around the extreme edge of my canvas. And again, you can just see where it goes over into that alizarin crimson and dark sienna. And once again, you're not going to see much of this colour because it's a dark colour over a black background. Now, the liquid clear that I put onto there, another colour or another piece of the painting which you can't see, aids the application of colours. It means that I can just put these colours on here straight from the palette and they will blend in nicely. Without the liquid clear, I'd still be stuck here trying to get some colour to stick, and I certainly wouldn't be able to get all these colours to blend at the edges. They'd all be just stuck in place. So the liquid clear is essential. For this bit, I will dry clean my brush because, well, there's just about every colour on my painting on here so far. I just want to knock off some of this excess paint, or else it's really going to contaminate the watery area. I forgot to put the Prussian blue out earlier on, so I've added it to my palette down here. I want to just pick up a nice amount of this. Again, don't be afraid to add a little bit more onto your brush. And I know that the Prussian blue, when it hits with a little bit of brown and some of these other colours, makes a sort of a nice sort of emerald green colour. There you go, so it's got a really nice tone to it. And again, I'm just going to put this across here, and this will be the watery area in my painting. Little fingertip test. Check those colours and make sure they're nice and strong. That looks to be about the minimum. I probably want it even stronger than that. There you go, another little fingertip test. Now that's looking really good and strong. That's the sort of colour I'm looking for. Blue with a little bit of a greenish tint to it. Perfect. Now, time to blend all of these edges together. I've gone back to my nice new brush. Top tip though, remember, once you start blending here, you can't go back to the centre, so make sure you're happy with this before you move on. And there, I think that's about as much blending as I need to do, and I can still see the shape of my cabin. Having created my nice background glow, I want to put some vegetation in here. I need a bit more depth and distance. And for this, I'm going to start off with a little bit of titanium white, maybe a little touch of yellow ochre, maybe even a little speck of crimson, but go easy with that crimson colour. Look at that. Wow. Really transformed my colour there quite dramatically. In fact, I can't even use this colour again. It just turned everything raspberry. If that happens to you, then clean it off and start again. White, little touch of yellow ochre. I think maybe tiniest touch, put it out to the side. That's probably what I should have done in the first place. Put it over to one side and then blend the two colours into each other, sort of get a nice sort of golden colour there. So you've got a nice sort of soft colour. Try and touch a little touch of the dark sienna. So again, I've got a nice little spectrum of colours here. I'm going to use a fan brush for this, and I'm going to go into my colours, load my brush really well. It's almost like a flesh colour, isn't it? Now, I don't know if this is the right colour or not. I won't know until I get it onto my canvas. But I want to see some nice background trees here. And so I'll probably start off with just a few little downward taps. Do they show up? No, they don't. I need to increase the value. A little more dark sienna, a little touch more of that crimson colour. Darken it slightly, maybe even a little bit more. And again, go in, add a couple of touches. Now we can see something happening. So I'm going to go for some nice background trees. Again, don't lose the little glow. And throughout this entire process of adding these little background trees to my painting, I'm going to be adjusting my colours. Occasionally I'll dip into a little bit more of that sienna colour, occasionally back into alizarin crimson, and occasionally sometimes into the ochre. So you are always adjusting your colours and looking for ways to just sort of change the way things look to make them work. And as I come away from the light spot, I want to start introducing some slightly stronger, darker sort of colours. So again, go back into my bit of darks, into my darks, into Van Dyke Brown there by mistake, but it doesn't matter. Maybe a little more yellow ochre. Slightly more dark tan colour now. And again, I'm going to just start scrubbing in some little detail in here. And this is a nice little stroke, if you can master it. Just to use the corner of your brush and just to scrub. I'm not using much of the brush to do this. I just want to create some nice sort of foliage. Again, not too dark. I need some nice bushes through here, and I need them to show up a little more strongly. I'll probably have some nice foliage coming in from the side here as well. Again, just some soft branches. And you'll see my colours are now getting quite nice and dark. even touching into a little bit of that alizarin crimson colour. Get a nice sort of brownish tone to it. And again, just keep working layer upon layer, leaving these little holes peeking through now and then. Real good fun. Through the side here, I want to really come in here with quite a nice strong dark sienna colour. Again, just to sort of kind of create this sort of nice sort of bowl effect. Your eyes being drawn to the background. So you add a little Van Dyke brown and we get a really good strong dark colour. And I want this on the very, very edge of my painting just to close this side off. Do I want to cover up my corner? I don't know. What do you think? Shall I go that high? Could be good fun, couldn't it? Well, sometimes it's best to leave things like that for the time being and think, so well, I can always come back and add to that if I need to. Let me just soften up these edges just a little more. And by now I've worked my way right back out to the edge of my cabin. I can just still about see that, but what I can do is I can clean this area off in a minute and find my outline. If you think you've lost your cabin, don't worry. You can always pick up a palette knife, just scrape away some of the paint. As you do, you'll find the outline is still there. I'll clean it up a little bit more so you can see exactly what I can see. Without the camera in place, it's clearly visible from where I'm standing, but when I looked at it through the screen, I realised you actually can't see anything. So I'm just using a little bit of paper towel just to wipe off just a tiny bit more paint. And again, you can see the outline re-emerging. As I say, when you're filming something, it can look very different to the way it looks when you're actually standing in front of it. But once again, the shape of my little cabin emerges. I want to add a little structure to the background here, so I need a few little sticks and twigs to hold this together. And I'm going to use a little drop of this linseed oil. I'm going to use a Bob Ross liner brush. Just adding a couple of drops of linseed oil to my palette just to thin the paint down. Now, if you don't have linseed oil, you could add a couple of drops of odorless thinners to it, which I don't keep in the house. I did keep it outside the house. Or you could use a little drop of the liquid clear. But I've got some linseed oil, so that's what I'm going to use. You want to make a nice paint that's sort of runny, thin like ink, but not too wishy-washy. I'm using that colour because it matches the colours in the background here. It's not too strong. And I'm going to just put in just a few suggestions in here. Now I'm going to be putting in some more dark colours over the top of here. So some of these stumpy ends, they'll get covered up. So don't worry too much. For the next stage of my painting, I want to paint in some nice overhanging foliage, but darker again. For this, I need a really good strong dark colour. So I'm going to take a decent amount of black, a good amount of Van Dyke brown, some dark sienna, and some of that alizarin crimson colour. I'm going to mix these all together. So I want a really good, strong, dark, chocolatey brown colour. I think that's going to be about right for my painting. Spread it down really flat. Now, I've gone back to my old brush. I last used this when I was putting on some blue over the top, but I don't think it's going to affect my colour. Remember, this is a nice chocolatey brown colour, and I think at worst it's going to do is maybe a little hint of green in it, so that's fine. I'm going to pull my brush back and give it a little push. Okay, now there's paint on both sides of my brush here, so I'm not too worried about it not holding a perfect shape, but I do want to give that little tiny push effect. A little push, create a little bit of a ridge in the paint. I have that same little ridge right on the very edge of my brush. Now think about the branches growing in from the side over this lovely area here. I want to tip my brush at a slight angle and just tap. Leave a lovely dark outline of some trees just hanging in from the side. But I don't want to kill off all this lovely light brown tone in here. This is just another one of the layers in my paint. I think I might swing my camera around to one side because it's catching a bit of a reflection here. That's better. Now you can see what I'm doing. As I say, with my brush, give it a little push into this lovely chocolatey brown colour. And you can see I'm making the shapes of some little branches. Now think of them like little fingers coming in from the side. And you're doing one little sort of branch at a time. There's one little branch. I'm going to give it a little friend underneath. Keep thinking about the shapes of branches. I like to think of them almost like little umbrella shapes. There's like half an umbrella shape there. These little fingers, that forms another half an umbrella. Don't forget, if we lose the shape of the cabin, I can get it back. And as we get back into here, I can just fill this in with lots of lovely dark colour. But again, adding texture all the time. As my cabin stands on the little bank side, I'll carry on adding this dark chocolate brown colour. But instead of working on a corner, I'll just work on flat. And again, I'm just looking to texture my painting. And I'm going to extend that bank right out underneath this area in my painting. So this stage of my painting is often called the ugly stage, and you can see why. Everything's dark and miserable, so it's time we turn the lights on. We made some highlights. And for this I'm going to pull one of my favourite brushes, and it's a Bob Ross oval bristle brush. It's 1 inch wide, and as you can see, it's really dense and full of lovely bristles. And look at that shape. Does that remind you of an umbrella? Well, don't worry if you haven't got one like that, because you can actually get synthetic ones as well. This came from a big box DIY store locally, and it has the same shape. And this is great because synthetic brushes work well with water mixable oil, so you can wash these in water. But I wouldn't advise you washing a Bob Ross brush in water. They just don't like it. Now, as we have a really lovely shape, it should be making some lovely highlights for us. And I'm going to use my brush one side only, and I hope you can see my Bob Ross logo there, which means I'm going to be putting the paint on one face only. If I forget and flip it over and start putting paint on the other side, my brush will clog. I'm going to go into some Indian yellow, a little touch of yellow ochre, and I'm going to give it a little push. A little push. And see what I'm doing with that brush? I'm pushing the paint ahead of the bristles. Now, it doesn't have a corner to favour, but I can favour one side of it a little bit more, because that's the corner of the brush, or the side of the brush I'm going to be highlighting with. So I need to bring the brush up and just tip it slightly. Remember, all the light's rushing through from this side of my painting, so the ends of these little branches are going to catch these little highlights. I'll try and get you a little close-up of my brush. If I hold it just there and try and zoom in a bit, you can see that bright line of paint on the edge of my brush. Now, bring your brush in at a slight angle and touch gently. The shape of the brush lends itself to painting branches. There you go. It doesn't take any effort. But you can, of course, end up painting branches which look, well, just more and more umbrellas all stacked up. So it pays to get good at manipulating this brush a little bit more and tipping it up on edge sometimes and then holding it flat sometimes. Now you can see I've done 1, 2, 3, 4 stripes there. If I carry on like this, this is going to look like more like a tiger with its stripes. So as you do this, learn to vary the angles a little bit more. So instead of just doing one stripe, you can just tip the brush and get some different angles going. So you get like 2 little breaks on that little branch there. And maybe you'll link that piece up into there. I'll move my camera around so you get a better angle. As you can see, I can just touch with the edge of my brush and leave a little imprint of those bristles. With every touch, I leave thousands and thousands of little imprints. The trick is to save some dark. It's very easy to overdo it. And I have to remember that there is also going to be another tree in here, and I need to change the colour for it. Give it a little push. See, I pulled it into some of the Indian yellow colour to calm it down. Now let's think about painting another tree. Different colour. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And these trees, they paint themselves really quickly. And it's so easy to just overdo it. behind this cabin, I think these trees will be getting darker. Remember, this paint is sticking to a lovely chocolate brown colour we put on there. And as I dab my brush on there, so it's picking up some of that dark brown colour. And my paint is starting to get darker and darker. I'll let my brush run out as I go around the back of the cabin. And there you have it. That's all the highlights I need. I'll stand back and have a look at them from the other side of the room. So I reposition my camera, looking straight at the canvas. And here now you can see all these lovely layers of foliage and that subtle shift of colour. I went with this golden colour to a slightly more green gold colour. But I didn't kill off all the dark. The dark colour is your friend. If you cover everything up, well, it loses so much of its depth. Now, let's work on this area of my painting and then we can come back and do the cabin. For the grassy area under the cabin, I'm going to use a nice Bob Ross 1-inch brush. Again, notice the logo. I always want that one showing up at the top so that I don't load the wrong side of my brush. Again, sap green, cadmium yellow, a touch of ochre, give it a little push. I may even put a little bit of red into it in a minute. Again, think about how that light comes through there and probably illuminates this little edge first. This is going to be the brightest part of my little grassy bank. So I'm just going to touch in there. And if that looks a little bit too neat and tidy, here's a neat little trick. Instead of coming on dead flat, come in with a little bit of an angle to it, and you can create this nice sort of rough, sort of bumpy edge to it, so that it looks a little bit more natural and a little bit less like it's just been trimmed up with a lawnmower. This is what I'm going to do just with the corner of my brush. There we go. Put a little bit of highlight on him. And I'm going to carry on working down, saving layers of dark as I go. Another little bright one just there. Kind of going up to the base of my little cabin. And again, once you start working away from there, allow your colour to fade away and get a little darker. I give my brush a little bit of a dry clean. I fancy having go a little bit of an orange colour. I'll take some Indian yellow, tiny touch of bright red. This will make a lovely sort of fiery orange colour, but I say make sure you've knocked off all of the green colour from your brush, because otherwise it will tend to make a sort of a muddy brown colour. I want something just a little bit fiery. A nice orange colour here. Maybe some foliage that's sort of coming up on the ground here. Touch of an orange tint to it, especially back here in the shadows. Look at that, wow, gives it a lovely little change of colour. And again, don't kill all those lovely darks. In this section of my painting, what I do looks like almost like a little miniature sort of cliff edge, like a deep riverbank on this side. And I'm going to use a little bit of Van Dyke Brown for this. And my palette knife, I take a little roll of the Van Dyke Brown, and you can see where the grass just sort of runs out. There's a little dark edge there. And I'm going to just touch that and pull down and just indicate there's maybe a little bit of a drop down to the waterline, which is a little bit lower down, probably about an inch there. And you can see how I've tapered my land off into the distance. So as we come forward here, these look like the drops are going to be a little deeper. Okay, so my water's going to go back up and up and up into the distance. And by doing this, I create perspective from big to small. The angles that you use and your choices of colours influence how your painting is going to be eventually seen. And now I need a marble mixed colour. I'm going to take a little white, a little dark sienna, I'm a bit tight for space here, get a little bit of yellow ochre, and maybe just a little touch of blue, just for fun. I think I need a bit more room on my palette. Just throw a little colour in there, just a little fun colour. And again, just slide across and get a little roll of paint. Doesn't have to be much. Doesn't have to be much. But don't overmix those colours. And I'm going to super light touch with this. Just touch and just drag a knife down. It looks a little bright to me. Let's tone that down a little more. See how I apply a little bit of paint and then I do a little assessment. I kind of sit and look, and kind of almost immediately you realise something isn't quite right. It's a little off. And see how that juts out there. So this is going to be a little bit darker. Sometimes it's nice to switch that little small blade. And you don't have to have this as a continuous bank here. You can have little breaks and little dips. I'm going to get some vegetation growing over this. I just wanted a little bit of a riverbank there, and I'm going to put some vegetation now growing over the edge. And I've still got my nice little brush, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to get into some of that nice orangey yellow colour. It's the last colour we used over here. And instead of going just straight across, now I'm actually going to start angling my brush downwards. See, got a nice little tip. So this is the reason why I leave some little dark bits in here, because it's much easier to get these little highlights to stick over some Van Dyke brown than it is to try and make them stick to these highlights where they won't show up. That's lovely, isn't it? It's fun. And I leave that little hole in there. Maybe something lives in that little hole. And if you've seen any of Bob's painting shows, and I'm sure you've seen a few, you know, Bob was a storyteller. And he would be making up the story in his head as he told you what he was painting. He would tell you that there was little doers and little critters and little things in his painting. And it is those little fun conversations we have in our head that make our paintings what they are sometimes. So that often repeated saying, you don't have to be mad to paint, but it helps. Well, take it from me. A little bit of madness never did anyone any harm. All these little bits and pieces of technique I show you and I try and bring to life for you, is to give you ideas about your own painting. So you see what I do and you think, I like what he did. I like that bit. I wasn't keen on that bit. This bit I liked. I like what he did there. He did that funny little movement. He did that little twist of the brush and it got me a good result. And that's the whole idea about watching someone else paint, is that you see how they do little things and they drop little bright sparklers in. And then when you're in front of your own painting, you do the same. Now, for the watery areas of my painting, I'm going to carry on using this nice brush. Yes, it's got a bit of yellow on it, it's got a bit of green on it, and got a bit of red on it, but I dry cleaned it really well. I don't mind if this actually doesn't come out as very blue. I quite like it if it almost comes out a little bit sort of muddy green colour. There we go. And I could tint it a little blue if I wish to. Let's do that just for fun. Yeah, there you go. There's a nice pea green colour for you. That's cool. The bright spot's actually going to be over here and it's going to be getting darker. So instead of brushing down and dumping all the bright colour there, I'm going to try and do the opposite. I'm going to try and brush up. I'm going to try and lift off about here. And this is a bit of an experiment, folks. If this goes badly wrong, then I'm for it. But there we go. Touch, press right under that bright spot. Get my hand out of the way. And try and lift up. Try and do this and keep my hand so I'm not covering up what I'm doing. It's difficult to try and go in a straight line when you're trying to paint at a funny angle. But now this gets to feeling good, and the temptation to want to go back over it again is extremely, extremely keen. keen to have another crack at it. But I tell you now, if you do, then you'll lose this lovely vibrance. So please don't. Give that a little bit of a dry clean, knock off all of that excess paint. And now I'm going to go gently across this. I'm going to go across probably up here first. So I'm just going to disturb that just a little bit. Edge to center. Okay. I think that's about right. See, I can get a lovely kind of blur effect. Sometimes I turn my brush on its edge. You get a little bit kind of more of a sharp movement of the water. And you get these kind of nice wobbles happening. There we go. And I picked up a little chunk of paint there as I went across there, which is the reason why I started there and went down, is because I didn't want to pick up a chunk of paint there and then put it straight across my painting. So I made that mistake before. So I'm going to knock off that. There we go. Little touch. Titanium wire, small blade of the knife here. And just kind of up in here, under these rocks, in the shadowy areas, a little waterline. And remember, we're working down in stages and in steps. And notice how sometimes you can run your knife across there and you displace that paint that we brushed up and down. And you get a little dark ripple. Isn't that cool? So you can create things by taking paint away as well as adding. Bob would always use a palette knife to paint his cabins. And I like using them too, but not everyone's favourite. So you can always use a brush. Now this is the same brush I actually applied the acrylic with. I washed and dried it, and I've left it out overnight, and it's now dry enough to use with oil paints. So let's paint our cabin using a brush just for fun. I've still got some of my paint here that I used to do my rocks with. So it's got a nice blue-grey colour to it. A touch more white, a touch of yellow ochre. Let's say I'm just going to drag my brush through it and just make some nice brown tones with it, and a little hint of blue in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop in the sort of side of my little barn. I'm just going to touch and drag. Now here's a tip for you. Leave that little overhang there nice and dark, because we want that to be like it's up in the shadows. And I don't want it too bright. This is supposed to be the shadowy side, so I'm going to take a little bit of Van Dyke brown, drop in a couple of boards and a couple of planks and the like, so you can really kind of darken this down a little bit. The neat thing is, if you want to, you can actually outline the position for the door and just leave that dark brown colour do the work for you. There you go. It's probably one of the simplest cabins to paint. There we are. And the side of it's going to be a lot darker. It's on the shadow side. So you can take more Van Dyke brown. It's a nice dark colour there. You can add a little hint of blue to it. Get a kind of greenish grey colour. And you can just paint in the side of this. It looks a little bright. It's amazing that looks pretty dark. And yeah, when you put it on your cabin, it looks really super bright. You can add a touch of black to that. So the original chocolate brown colour there. You can just add a little shadow line under the cabin. And so I'm just using this brush like it was basically a soft palette knife. That's kind of how I kind of think about these brushes sometimes. They could be just like a soft palette knife. A little feature I like to make sure I can see on my cabins, and you can just about see my little line through there, is that there. So there is a nice clear distinction between the front and the side. And you just have to drop in and that little slightly brighter line there. And then just go back to being dark again. But see, that kind of gives the cabin a proper corner. I like these little dagger brushes. They're really super. If you don't have a little dagger brush, then you should get yourself one, because they're a lot of fun to paint with. And you can just, say, load the edge of it and just drop in a couple of little planks. There we go. Again, it's just like a soft palette knife, and they really work super well. And what should we do for the roof here? Bob did blue-grey shingles. Look kind of fun. Let's put some of those on there. He did like a blue-grey colour. I got that blue-grey colour here. Again, this little brush, it's got a nice sort of size to it, so let's just touch. Just mark out the ridge, don't lose that ridge line. Just touch and do a little pull. And you can add these little shingles to the roof. There you go. That looks like a nice little cabin roof. Of course, don't miss that detail out. We got the edge of the little shingles on this side too. Just make a little mark there. That's okay. I'll get that. There we go. Just got a little bit of that chocolate brown colour there. It's just to tidy up my little happy accident. I think that's pretty much done. You could drop in a little window in that chocolate brown colour if you want to as well. Now, let's say this is just a little extra if you want to do it for your painting, but you don't have to. I'm just picking up a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of Indian yellow. That would be nice. I need to top up my palette. What's going on here? Okay, let's just grab a little colour. Let's pick up a little bit of paint on the edge of my brush. Scoop it up. I'm just thinking the sun coming through here. Maybe just caught a little sparkler just on the edges of these little trees here. Just add a few little speckles of light. Don't get it too white though, folks. Remember, this is supposed to just be a little bit of light on the edge of a branch. And it doesn't take much, just a little touch is all it takes. Just these few little tiny speckles of light is what it takes sometimes just to make something really pop and stand out. I'm really pleased with my painting. So there you have it, Deep Wilderness Home, a smashing painting. And didn't you like that little trick with the cabin? Gosh, it makes it so much easier if you do it the way I do it. Now, don't move, there's some more lovely videos for you to watch coming right along. Happy painting, people.